Hello, 1517 Podcasts listeners. This is Caleb Keith, director of the 1517 Podcast Network, with a special announcement. Throughout the entire month of June, the Podcast Network at 1517 is hosting a special fundraiser. During the time of this fundraiser, two generous donors are doubling the impact of your generosity by matching dollar for dollar gifts given up to $75,000. The Podcast Network has a goal, including this match, to raise $150,000 during the month of June. These funds will play a crucial role in expanding our network onto additional platforms like YouTube and strategically reaching new audiences with direct marketing and with the creation of new types of content. Your support isn't just figurative. It's a tangible investment in the people and tools necessary to maintain and expand the work of our podcasts. People like the hosts of your favorite shows and the editors and marketing and creative teams behind the scenes that support our podcast throughout the years. Please go to 1517.org/donate-podcast today to help us reach this $150,000 goal. Thank you for being an integral partner of the 1517 Podcast community and for your unwavering dedication to sharing the pure gospel through our shows.
Welcome to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament is a 1517 Podcast Network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast and check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. And while you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that 1517 is doing. All the events, the articles, the videos, the academies. There's so much there for you to check out. And if you're looking at those things and you're like, man, this is a lot of stuff. Why is it all free? How is it possible? How is this going on? Well, it's possible because we are supported by people like you. If you're one of those people, thank you so much. If you're not one of those people and you want to become one of those people, we would greatly appreciate it. You can go to the donate tab on the website and you can become a reoccurring donor. You can give a one-time gift. You can do whatever you want to do. You can also follow a link in the show notes to support the show as well, and we would appreciate that. Chad, we got a little bit of something different, little something different in Job today. So far, for weeks now, we've been hearing arguments back and forth, and some of it sounded a little redundant, and some of the same arguments being served up a different way. And now you have this weird break. Job kind of ended with this sort of, it's a little bit hard to discern, but he seems to be making his friend's argument back to them. He has some points of agreement. He basically is saying that you're right about some things, but you're wrong about me. And then goes in chapter 28. If you pulled 28 out and you just went right to 29, it would feel more fluid. But 28 sounds like Job is he goes a little bit of a bunny trail here, right? It seems like he takes a little bit of a side road, and then in 29 sort of circles back around to what's going on.
Yeah, which is why, and I tend to, we can't say definitively, but this is kind of the direction that I lean. I tend to think that the Job 28 is actually not by Job. But instead, this is inserted probably by whoever this anonymous person is who's the real author of Job. So maybe we talked about this when we started this book. I don't remember. I've slept too many times since then, but we don't know who wrote Job. In fact, it's hard to even position it historically. It's couched in what would be called the patriarchal period. But, we don't know who wrote it. With this, all that material is not given to us. But it does seem as if it's logical to think that Job 28 kind of serves as an interlude, kind of a segue between everything that we've been covering so far that you just described, and then what is to come. So a lot of scholars will suggest that this is actually written by whoever wrote Job and inserted here as kind of a chance to, hey, let's put on the brakes. We've heard a lot of arguing back and forth and back and forth, and we're about to hear kind of three long speeches. Job has more to say. He's gonna kind of give his final closing argument for who he was and now what he's become. And then you're gonna have this guy pop up out of nowhere, some young, angry theologian by the name of Elihu.
I think he's a
who's gonna-
seminarian. He's probably a seminarian.
Yeah, I think yeah. With apologies to all the seminarians out there, I think Elihu's a second-year seminarian. Hey, I can say that I've been there. Second-year seminarians, we got it all figured out. Elihu's, got it all figured out. He's gonna drop some wisdom on us. So that's gonna happen, and then he can be totally ignored, and God is going to finally begin to speak. So you got three big speeches coming up. You got Job's last hurrah, Elihu, and then you have God. So, but before all that, we're going to have this beautiful exposition, kind of this poem on wisdom.
I have always thought that is how Job 28 reads. That it's like the narrator is like breaks in. But I don't know if they call it like breaking the third wall. Is that what that is? Right. So he, you have this person telling a story, and maybe you're just telling the story verbatim, and you're not giving any commentary. You're not interjecting anything. You're just telling the story, and then you pause and you begin to give your thoughts. You're no longer just explaining what happened and these events and putting forward, hey, this guy said this, and here's how the arguments went. But now you're actually interjecting yourself and your thoughts into it, and that's how 28 reads to me.
Yeah, I think that fits perfectly. And so what we're going to see is it's kind of three main sections in I believe Job 28 is actually, it's 28 verses as well. So you're gonna have three main parts. You're gonna hear, it's gonna start out, actually, you're like, what is he even talking? Like, if you just pulled this out and started reading it to someone, they'd be like, where are you going with this? Because at first you don't know. I mean, he's like talking about these precious metals and these ancient mining techniques. You're like, okay, so what's the point of this? And then he's going to tell you. You got two refrains, which they're not verbatim the same, but basically communicating the same things. So verse 12 will say, where shall wisdom be found? Where is the place of understanding? And then that's going to lead into a talk about all of these things of great value that really are of much less value than wisdom. And then you're going to have the refrain again, from where then does wisdom come? Where is the place of understanding? And it's going to wrap up in those closing verses with God saying, I'm the one who's got wisdom. And let me tell you what it is. So that's the way it starts out. So I'll read these opening few verses, first 11 verses, where we hear all about ancient mining and how this worked. This is unique in the Old Testament. Only place in the Old Testament we have stuff like this being discussed. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place for gold that they refine. Iron is taken out of the earth, and copper is smelted from the ore. Man puts an end to darkness and searches out to the farthest limits the ore in gloom and deep darkness. He opens shafts in a valley away from where anyone lives. They are forgotten by travelers. They hang in the air, far away from mankind. They swing to and fro. As for the earth, out of it comes bread, but underneath it is turned up as by fire. Its stones are the place of sapphire, and it has dust of gold. That path no bird of prey knows, and the falcon's eye has not seen it. The proud beast have not trodden it. The lion has not passed over it. Man puts his hand to the flinty rock and overturns mountains by the roots. He cuts out channels in the rock. His eye sees every precious thing. He dams up the streams so that they do not trickle, and the thing that is hidden he brings out to light. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? So you got to get to the 12th verse before you figure out what those first 11 verses are about. And all of this is in various ways, some of which are understandable, some of which are a bit ambiguous. but describing, this is what people do. This is what the ancient people did, and of course, what people still do with modern techniques to find these precious metals. We have all four of them. We have four of them mentioned in these opening two verses: silver, gold, iron, and copper. So we have these precious metals being mined out of the earth, and then of course the point when you get to the 12th verse is, well, that's all great, but where do you mine for wisdom? Where do you dig for understanding?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing here is that you got to think about this time period. What are some of the most impressive things that man is able to do? We take a lot of things for granted because we don't see how any of the sausage is made. But so you go to the gas pump and you're like, let me pump this gas into my car, and you don't think about what kind of insane process has happened, right?
To get from A to B.
Yeah, I mean, you're what's going on here? Someone pulled oil out of the ground, and you've made gasoline out of dinosaur bodies or whatever, and it's a crazy thing. Now we have all kinds of technology for refining and all this kind of stuff, but if you think about at this time, what is some of the most impressive? I mean, it's kind of even to me crazy to think about. Okay, so you're over there, you're mining for silver. All right, I get that. So someone discovered that here in this hole in the ground, you can take a chisel and there's these silver in here, so you can get it out. Same with gold. You can find veins of gold, get it out. You can refine it. But then you start being iron taken out of the earth. That's wild. That how early they were able to figure this out, and they could make stuff out of it, and they could get copper out of ore. So this is all stuff where you're hey, you have to, we know this stuff exists, and there's a way to find it, and then a way to use it. And these are all extremely impressive things. Everybody's look what we can do here. We can do all this stuff. This is pretty impressive. But the one thing you can't find, even though you can find all these other things, which are very difficult to find and very difficult to do anything with, you'd be what about wisdom? You're well, surely that's easy to find, right? No.
Yeah.
More difficult.
Right. Yeah, you do have this contrast that's set up. These amazing discoveries that humanity has been engaged in. You're like you say, you're digging down, you find all these things. So you would think, with humanity being able to do what is described here, and we could of course just fast forward to what we're able to do today with science, with medical technology, with space travel. I mean, you just on and on and on. It's kind of the Tower of Babel replayed over and over in world history. What are they going to do next? What are they going to build next? What are they going to discover next? And while all this is going on, you really have the greatest treasure of all. And the question is, where are you going to find it? Where's wisdom? Where's the place of understanding?
Well, you would think you could hear the argument, because we made this argument today. You're look at all the things we can do. Man, we must be wise. I'm sure they're look at what we can do. Look at the things we're pulling out of the earth, and then how we use them, and the things we create with them. Oh, our wisdom is great. Surely we have found wisdom, and the answer is no. And you know how this goes. We can do all kinds of insane things. I mean, you look at medical advances and all this stuff. And then you also look around and you're does anybody have any wisdom? Because we can do a lot, and it seems like we got a lot of smart people doing a lot of smart things. But even in our day and age, you're do you think wisdom is in large supply? Is that you just have all kinds of wise people walking around? I don't think so.
No. Well, then it's funny when this comes up. This was unplanned. I just was writing about this morning, something connection with the book of Proverbs. I mean, it is ironic, right? Because we have today what no generation in human history has ever had. I mean, they wouldn't have been able to dream of what I'm holding my cell phone in my hand right here, the kind of information that I can access with this. I mean, it would have been undreamt of in any previous generation.
Yep.
So we have all of this, information. We can read whatever we want to. We can tap into these great intellects just with the touch of a button. But that does not mean that we have ceased to be still the same flawed people that we are. So, I mean, all of this is not going to alter our fundamental humanity, our low anthropology, as our friend Dave Zoll would describe it. And then, so, I mean, hand in hand with the access to all this information in, our current mining techniques, to use that metaphor, I mean, it goes also the ability to transform that into even greater evil. Every discovery is used in positive and negative ways in that respect.
Well, I mean, I think if you took your cell phone, Chad, and you went back to 1900 and you showed it to them, and you're like, look at all the things, all the knowledge I can access. I mean, of course, they would, first of all, you get burned at the stake or something for having like witchcraft in your hand.
Yeah,
but
right.
Assuming you talked your way out of that, one thing that someone might assume is like, man, so in the future, with all the accessibility that you have to all of this wisdom, all this ancient wisdom. I mean, you can just access the words of Plato and all these things anytime you want. Surely, you must belong. There must be everyone must be exercising extreme amounts of wisdom. I mean, has everyone just become wise? And of course, we living in this time, you're like, I don't know if it's really made anyone wise. I don't know if I would.
I don't know if I would put it that way.
In fact, it might have done the opposite. Like, I don't think that we've increased in wisdom.
Yeah.
Kids just don't go outside anymore. That's all.
That's all. Yeah. I mean, that kind of is it's one of the points of not only this section of Job 28, but what is to come as well. I mean, so humanity has always had access to at least limited things of good, whether that's intelligence, whether that's things that are of value, whatever it might be. But that which has always been available to humanity has also been that which humanity makes limited use of.
Yeah.
And of course, that is wisdom. I don't want to. This is kind of a factual, interesting detail that some of our listeners might find interesting. I did. So, verse 3 says, when it's talking about the mining, man puts an end to darkness and searches out to the farthest limit, the ore in gloom and deep darkness. I was just thinking, how did that work, practically speaking? I mean, you don't have like floodlights and things of that nature. So I did a little digging. So get this. Just imagine this is written by Diodorus of Sicily, a Greek historian, lived in the 1st century BC, and he's describing gold mining in Nubia. And he says these guys, they work in darkness, and they're like bending and winding through the passages. And he says they carry lamps bound on their foreheads so they can work their way through this. Now, these lamps would have been oil lamps. There were no oil lamps. So just picture that in your head. You got an oil lamp bound to your forehead, and somehow this is giving light as you're working your way through these mine shafts. It certainly makes you appreciate a lot more kind of our modern techniques of finding light in the midst of the darkness.
Yeah, that's
all that to say. I mean, they found a way to do this,
yeah,
even in the ancient world.
Yeah, that's extremely dangerous.
Yeah, not recommended. Do not try this at home.
If you like someone yells your name and you turn your head and like you're in a narrow passage and you smash that thing and then that oil gets all over your face and I mean you're in deep trouble.
You're in bad trouble.
There's about to be there's going to be a lot of light at that point.
You're hoping for some medical advances at that point. And then what was the other line in here? It talks about verse 4, they hang in the air far away from mankind, swinging to and fro. So they're letting these guys down in these baskets and these ropes, and they're chiseling away. And it's amazing anyway, what they were able to do. And then yet, where shall wisdom be found? Where are you going to mine for understanding? That's a question that's posed. Okay, verse 13 is going to continue this from a different direction, though. Man does not know its worth. That is wisdom and understanding's worth. Man does not know its worth, and it is not found in the land of the living. The deep says, it's not in me. The sea says, it's not with me. It can't be bought for gold, and silver cannot be weighed as its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir, in the precious onyx or sapphire. Gold and glass cannot equal it, nor can it be exchanged for jewels of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or of crystal. The price of wisdom is above pearls. The topaz of Ethiopia cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. And then the refrain comes again. From where then does wisdom come? And where is the place of understanding? So, I mean, it kind of continues in the same vein of this stuff of value. We talked about gold and silver and copper and iron earlier, but now it's bringing in all these others. You know, the gold of Ophir and onyx and sapphire and topaz of Ethiopia and everything else of great worth is nothing compared to wisdom, and nor can it be purchased by means of these precious metals or these precious stones. And the deep and the sea say, well, we don't have it. It's not in us. So it's a long poetic, detailed reflection upon not only the value of wisdom, but also the limited place in which it can be found.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the idea here is like, okay, if you can't find it, right? So like, where shall it be found? And you're like, can we mine for it? Can we seek it out? Is it, maybe it's in the deep? Maybe it's like, can you go to the depths of the ocean and find it? No. Okay, well, if you can't find it, maybe you can buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer to that is no. No, you cannot, right? So you go from like we sought all of these, we're able to find all of these precious things. So can we do that with wisdom? No. Well, maybe we can take these precious things and go purchase wisdom. And the answer again is no.
It's getting very disappointing, Dan.
It is.
It's like, man, this gonna be hard to get. I mean, if you can't find it, if you can't buy it, then how in the world are you going to become wise? And then the closing section, which is verses 23 through 28, is going to lead us to the answer. God understands the way to it. So kind of a play on words there, by the way, because we have where is the place of understanding, which in Hebrew is binah. And then this is the verbal form of that. So God being. So God understands the way to it. And he knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he gave to the wind its weight and apportioned the waters by measure. When he made a decree for the rain and a way for the lightning of the thunder. Then he saw it and declared it. He established it and searched it out. And he said to man, now all this is, here we go. This is, the whole chapter's been leading to this moment. He said to man, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And to turn away from evil is understanding.
Yeah.
Now,
dude, there's one line in here that I love. Like, but we'll get to it. So go ahead.
Okay. Now, there is a part of me that gets to the very end of this, and it's like, that's it? Wait, this whole chapter has been like teasing us. You know, you can't dig for it, you can't find it, you can't buy it. I mean, it kind of sets. I almost feel like it's teasing us, like it's setting us up for it's going to drop. The wisdom that it's going to drop on us is something that you could never have anticipated. I mean, it's just going to be one of these mind-blowing, awesome moments where something is going to be disclosed to you that you never could have seen coming. But you get to the end and it's like, all right, come close. No, a little bit closer. I'm going to whisper this to you. This is wisdom, the fear of the Lord, and the turn away from understanding, from evil. That is understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's the beauty of it, though. It's not complicated, and it is accessible as soon as you begin to understand that its accessibility is found only in the God who gives and then who speaks this wisdom to us. I do
Yeah,
love that little
yeah.
line. I don't know what you're going to talk about, but I mean, let me say one of my favorite lines in here, beginning of verse 28. And he said to man, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. In other words, God speaks. He discloses this. It's not something which we kind of figure out on our own. Rather, it's given to us verbally. It's given to us by God speaking his word. That's ultimately how we know what wisdom is.
Well, it turns out that
What's your line?
I'll go there in a sec, but to that line, turns out that wisdom is found in a very simple thing, but also like the last thing that you ever want to do.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I don't want to like. So to fear God is this is to worship God, right? This is to hold God as God. This is so you fear the Lord. That's wisdom. Turn away from evil. That's understanding. You're like, okay, those are the two things I don't want to do at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want God to be God because I want to be God. And I don't want to turn away from evil because I am in fact evil. So
that's exactly what I want to do and be.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's very simple, but you're also like, oh no, not that. Don't make me do that. Can I buy it? What if I mined the earth of all its riches? I could give you that in exchange. Just don't make me do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's simple, and it's the very last thing that we want. I mean, you can kind of see both these as. I mean, there's in summary form the horizontal and vertical connections that we have. So to fear the Lord is to stand, like you said, to worship Him, to stand in awe of Him. To fear the fear of the Lord, as we've talked about many times in the podcast, is an all-encompassing phrase for everything from trust to love to awe to worship. So it's the Old Testament's way of saying that you are in the right place with God. To fear the Lord. And then, of course, more horizontally, turn away from evil. That could be understood also vertically, but mainly you turn away from the evil that you're going to do to others. So, in other words, you lead a pure and a loving and a righteous life. There you go. That's wisdom. That's understanding.
Yeah, I mean, the line here. So, if you know about wisdom literature, and now we haven't got into a bunch of wisdom literature, but if you know about wisdom literature, of course, wisdom personified is Jesus, right? So, like when you get to the wisdom literature, it talks about wisdom as a person. It's not just like a knowing something or anything like that. So wisdom is a person, and and I would say that's true here. That like the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, but the fear of the Lord is also to know Christ, to know who God is and what He's done. So when you think about wisdom personified as a person, and that person being Jesus Christ, you have this amazing thing where in verse 22, where Abaddon and death, so this would be like hell or the grave and death itself, we'll say that, the grave and death itself, they say this: we have heard a rumor of it with our ears. Mm-hmm. Like, that language is amazing. Like, so like you have to think about death and the grave, and you're like seeking out wisdom. And what do they say? They say, "Oh, we've heard a rumor of this person named Wisdom. We've heard a rumor of it." Like, what would this rumor be? That he's the end of you, right? I mean, like there's whisperings and rumors, and there's something floating around that death and the grave have heard about this wisdom. It's not good news for them either.
I would say it's bad, very bad news. It's not gospel to them. It's very bad news to them.
I just think that's an interesting thing for them to throw in there. Like, why do death and the grave have anything to say about this? They're like, oh, we've heard about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great line. In fact, I think I actually forgot to read that when I was reading the verses that follow 20. But yeah, I mean, that's a perfect line to draw from Job 28 all the way to the resurrection. Yeah, you've heard about this rumor, and let me tell you, it's not just a rumor. it's true. It's coming. Your days are numbered, and there will come a day when death is buried and the grave has its own funeral when Christ steps forth.
Yeah.
Wisdom incarnate steps forth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's great because before that, like, hey, it's hidden from the eyes of all living. It's concealed from the birds of the air. Like no one can find this. But there's like this sort of prophetic utterance that death knows about, right? And that's the rumor, right? Is this prophetic word that comes from God, and they're like, oh, like it's floating around out there.
What's that? What's that line? Is that Paul? Things hidden from the foundation of the world.
Yeah,
That idea. I mean, it's been there. It's hidden, but it's also there's good luck keeping something a secret. Word gets out. It's filtering all the way down into Abaddon and death, the grave. Hey, the word on the street is that the end is coming for them, and in fact, that's exactly what happens when Christ steps forth from the grave. And the rumor is proven to be factual.
Well, and that's how the gospel works a lot, especially like in the gospels. So like when wisdom is walking the earth, right? So like when that's happening in the person of Jesus, when he's walking the earth, how many people seek Jesus out based on, I mean, there is, and no one's like sharing a video or something. Like there's people seeking this guy out based on a rumor.
Just hearsay. Yeah.
They just hear
all over the place, too.
all everywhere. They're just like, why are they doing this? Because they heard someone told them something, and they're like, is it true? I mean, lepers are coming, blind people are coming, women with dead children are coming, like all these, and they're all like, it's like this whispering going around, like we had heard that, even like the road to Emmaus, like we had heard that this and this and this, and we thought this and this. It's all this sort of like language of like there's this rumor going around that this might be the guy, and people are like seeking it out, right? And so I think that rumor language like works well with kind of how it does actually play out for the grave and death. Yeah, like this rumor is going to be the end of you, because it is getting passed around.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that's a great connection to make from this whole chapter all the way to when wisdom comes and walks among us. So that's it. I mean, that's Job 28. That's all about the search for wisdom, the place of understanding, and eventually wisdom doesn't just show up, but he's born incarnate and comes to introduce us to not just to himself, but to how he's the entry point to this fear of the Lord and the turning away from evil and receiving that understanding.
I wonder if this like break in here too is, if you're just reading this and your ears are starting to get exhausted as you're listening to this discourse, and you start to wonder, like, am I just like missing it? Because this is all very like poetic language, and you're like, man, like, is this really wise? And I'm just not seeing it, because like it's all starting to sound the same. It's all starting to run together, and maybe I'm just not wise enough to, extract what I need to extract from this. And I think that you have this break in here that says, no, not really. Like none of this is like really. This is just some guys talking, and not. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about it, and there's lots of truths and stuff in there, but like this isn't wisdom. Like this is people having an argument, right?
Yeah, it's like the author of the play, like, removes all the actors from the stage, and he walks out and says, "Hey, everybody, just give me a minute. Let me tell you what this is really all about. There's a lot of dialogue here. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of plots and subplots. But let me focus your attention on what really matters and where all of this is leading."
Yeah,
because it functions literally like that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like Job's friends are what we would call wise in their own eyes, right? I mean, they certainly think they're dropping all kinds of wisdom.
Yeah.
But this break seems to tell you explicitly that they're not.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Oh, they're definitely wise in their own eyes, and probably were highly esteemed as wise by others. I mean, they clearly can. They're clearly rhetorically skilled. They can
Hmm.
talk. I mean, they can talk a good game. They can talk in this highfalutin poetry. But in the end, are they wise? No.
Yeah.
God Himself will say that at the end. They have not spoken to me what was right. They have acted according to folly. So, in fact, they can sound wise. They can even say some wise things, but that doesn't make them wise. In the end, they end up being fools that Job has to pray for
Yeah.
in order that God may may forgive them. Okay, so that's Job 28. Now we have Job doing do a little remembering here. So Job 30, 29, and 30 are really to be read together. We're not going to have time to get, of course, to get to both of those today. But if you happen to be reading along with us in Job, then don't read Job 29 without reading Job 30, and don't read Job 30 without reading Job 29. Because what's going to happen in these two chapters is basically Job is going to first of all begin by engaging in a little reminiscing about the better days, the good old days when not just, his life was so much better than it is now, but he was able to to be in his family and in his community, basically a compassionate patron of people who were in need, as well as a defender of justice. So he's going to recollect those days in chapter 29. And then there'll be a hard break in chapter 30, which begins, but now. And you can imagine what that's going to sound like. This is what it was like, but now look at me. And he's not going to just simply talk about his losses and the pain, the physical pain that he's enduring, but also just the public shaming and ridiculing that is heaped upon him. So that's what you have in 29 and 30. So here's how he starts out. And Job again took up his discourse and said, "Oh, that I were as in the months of old." By the way, that seems to indicate that what he's been going through has been at least a few months in duration. So, "Oh, that I were as in the months of old, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone upon my head, and by his light I walked through darkness. As I was in my prime." I think the Hebrew there is literally, yeah, the Hebrew there is like, I was in my ripeness. Some people translate my autumn days, but in prime is a good way for us to put it into modern English. When I was in my prime, when the friendship of God was upon my tent, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were all around me, when my steps, and here's your hyperbole, when my steps were washed with butter, and the rock poured out for me streams of oil. You know, I don't know what we would say. When I took baths in buckets of wine, we might say, whatever lavish language you want to use there. So this is kind of what he starts out. He says, when I went out to the gate of the city, when I prepared my seat in the square, what happened, Job? Well, verse 8 says, "The young men saw me and withdrew. The aged rose and stood. The princes refrained from talking, laid their hand on their mouth. The voice of the nobles was hushed. Their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard of it, it called me blessed. And when the eye saw it, it approved. Because," and here he finally actually gets to the point of saying some of the things he did, "because I delivered the poor who cried for help, and the fatherless who had none to help him. The blessing of him who was about to perish came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy." Now he's going to go on. That's just the first 13 verses, but you get a feel for what he's describing. First of all, he's just kind of reflecting back, in a hyperbolic and poetic sort of way about the better days when the lamp of God shone upon his head. You can kind of picture, God's walking along with this light shining above him, and he's in his prime. He's obviously God's friend. God's with him. His children are all great. His steps are washed with butter, and the rock pours out streams of oil. I mean, then when he gets to the gate of the city, and of course the gate of the city was where all the commerce and business transactions and judicial decisions, all of those, it's kind of the city square you might think of, the gate of the city where all this happened. Everybody sees Job coming and like, shh, quit talking, rise. If you're not very young, if you're young, to kind of get out of the way, and everyone has the deepest respect for Job. When he speaks, they listen. When he acts, they notice. And this is I don't take this as Job bragging. I just take this as Job thinking back to who he was and what he was able to do as one who feared the Lord and turned away from evil. When he was a wise man and was able to practice this wisdom, this is the way things were.
Yeah, I mean, it's more just reminiscing on a time when Job was somebody. Now he's nobody. And I mean, and part of this argument in this reminiscing is that when he was somebody, he used that station for good. Right, so there are lots of people who are somebodies that don't do that. They've had long discourses so far about people who are somebodies and they are wicked, right? Or they are power hungry and they use these things for evil. But Job here is saying, yeah, I was really somebody, and I used my position and my wealth and my status for good. I used it to help other people, which of course feeds right into his argument of, so if it's God that's doing this, which it sure seems like it is, I really don't understand.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And it also, it serves to contradict what a few chapters ago, Eliphaz, launched into this string of accusations against Job, saying, he was just, what was it? He breaking the arms of the orphan.
Yeah.
The arms of the fatherless. You sent widows away empty. You're just making stuff up. And Job says, to the contrary, he says, it was a beautiful line here. He says, I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I mean, it's an image of one who is such a benefactor to those who are in need that he makes them sing for joy. He's taking care of people, in other words. This is his ethics, his good works are displayed in good works toward the community, especially to those who are in need. So, and he's got more to say, but anyway, that's the beginning of him recollecting back on those better days when he was able to be this generous patron to people who were around him.
Yeah, and that is it, man. We are out of time, so we'll have to leave it there. We'll probably get the rest of Job's words and 29 and 30 next week, and then transition from there. Hopefully you will join us. Chad, I'll see you next time.
See you then. Hello, 1517 podcast listeners. This is Chad Bird, co-host of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament, with an announcement from the 1517 Podcast Network. Throughout the entire month of June, the Podcast Network at 1517 is launching a special fundraiser, and I need your help. Every dollar you contribute will be matched by 2 generous donors, doubling the impact of your generosity. The Podcast Network needs to raise $150,000 in an effort to support the ongoing creation and expansion of our shows. The funds raised will play a crucial role in expanding our network onto additional platforms, such as YouTube, and strategically reaching new audiences with the gospel. Your support isn't just a figurative donation. It's a tangible investment in the people and tools necessary to maintain and expand the work of our podcast. Please help us to reach our $150,000 goal. Simply visit www.1517.org/donate-podcast today. Thank you for being an integral partner of the 1517 podcast community and for your unwavering dedication to sharing the pure gospel through our shows.